sounding, please quickly make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room which members can use to vacate the premises. Please switch mobile phones onto silent or switch them off, and take any calls outside the meeting room if you receive any. Do not leave any bags unaccompanied and/or report any unaccompanied bags. Remember to take any bags with you when the meeting is concluded or as you leave the meeting. This meeting may be subject to filming or audio recording by others in accordance with the Council's filming protocol. Anyone who remains in the meeting following this announcement will have deemed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast. Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Bell, Councillor Swinscoe, and Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Whitley will act as substitute for Councillor Bell, and Councillor Abbs will act as substitute for Councillor Swinscoe.
Any further apologies from the floor? No. Declarations of interest. 2.
Chair.
Any declarations? Councillor Clay?
Yeah, on item 4, it's my ward and peculiar interest in it.
Any abstentions? Any against? Thank you. Item 4. Planning application reference 2022-0612 full 183 number dwellings with access and associated works, land west of Brickkiln Lane and south of Abbott Road. I invite the office to make the report.
Thank you, Chair. If I take you through the updates first, one additional letter has been received from a neighbour objecting to the proposal on the grounds of loss of biodiversity and last remaining piece of greenfield, no parks or anywhere to walk. Further comments: when all development has been passed, there is no room for any more, no bus service, and concern about lack of bus stops in Beck Lane and the service when the bus subsidy finishes. If archaeology is found, sounds like it won't be protected, not taking into consideration overall impact of other development in the area in relation to pollution, traffic congestion on Abbott Road and Water Lane, unsuitability of existing small roads and occurrences when the MAR is closed. One letter of comment has been received, not objecting to the principle of development, but makes the following comments. Highways, notes that one plan that's referenced in the highway officer's comments isn't listed in the plans section, approved plans. I think if I can advise you, that's actually included in one of the conditions. Following comments: application butts up to proposed allocation in Ashfield local plan. As Abbott Road, Brickkiln Lane Junction is over capacity in the 2018 Mansfield Transport Study, can a route be made through the Ashfield site? The application should be deferred to consider this. Loss of biodiversity, 30% loss is unacceptable. Conflict with the NPPF. does not agree with the that benefits outweigh the loss of biodiversity and consider the application is fundamentally flawed. Section 106 doesn't represent good value for council taxpayers. Officer report projects loss of £2,901,926 after paying Section 106 costs of £1,646,063. So why do the development? Figures in the report don't reconcile with the Coatisbury figures. Valuer initially advised 2.7 million, 9% after Section 106, 1.6 million contributions, revised down to 2 million after the consultation with Coatisbury, but advised employing a third-party independent review of external works. Request the application be deferred to seek independent valuation. CP Viability, who acted for the council on the viability, recommends a requirement for 100% affordable housing to be secured via the Section 106 agreement. That's actually proposed within the 106. Ask for deferral of the application to consider an alternative access onto the A6075, A617 junction. Requests further biodiversity mitigation. Includes, sorry, I've already done those. Plesley Community Action Group object to the application on the grounds of inconsistency in applying the housing mix and biodiversity policies. No transport impact in relation to Chesterfield Road through Plesley. Air quality in respect of point 2 with potential increased traffic taking into account cumulative impact and other development. Poor consideration of bird species, lack of knowledge of nesting habitats. No clear reasoning why the Section 106 contributions are being reduced. Incorrect NPPF references in the TA, transport assessment. Missing details in report of paragraph 186A of the NPPF. Purports that the report is developer-led. Queries, how do we know the developer will sell to a registered social landlord? And completes their rejection with the comment, clear that this report does not consider a whole area approach to assess the whole area impacts. Following up comments are offered at officer level. After further review, officers consider that some clarification is required in respect to the figures on page 38 of the agenda. These figures are from a high-level viability assessment based on a market housing scheme with no affordable housing. These were provided by the viability assessor at the request of the case officer to see if there was any difference between the viability of a 100% affordable housing scheme and a market housing scheme. These clearly show that a market housing scheme would be unviable and therefore not likely to be able to provide for any Section 106 contributions or affordable housing. The current scheme before members is 100% affordable housing, which will benefit from a Homes England grant. The scheme will provide 100% affordable housing along with £650,000 in Section 106 contributions. While this falls short of the required contributions, it is significantly better than no contributions and no affordable housing, which is likely to be achieved with a market housing scheme. It must be remembered that viability often becomes a process of negotiation between the applicant and the council. This is normal practice. There's been significant negotiation in respect of viability in this application. It is the officer's opinion that 100% affordable housing scheme with Section 106 contributions of £650,000 is reasonable, and if this site is to be developed at a market as a market value scheme, it's likely to generate no affordable housing and no contributions. Officers are satisfied that the viability assessment work is robust and in line with planning policy guidance. Discussions did take place in respect of whether to engage a quantity surveyor. However, having discussed this with the independent valuer, it was decided that the offer from the applicant was robust and could be accepted. 100% affordable housing would be controlled via the Section 106 agreement. It's recommended that an additional obligation is included within the Section 106 relating to a viability review mechanism. so that in the event that the viability improves, further contributions can be sought. Comments have been raised about Ashfield local plan. However, this site is allocated in the current site is allocated in the adopted Mansfield local plan, and it will be for the Ashfield local planning process to address cumulative impacts. In terms of an alternative access, the council has a duty to determine applications as submitted and are not required to suggest alternatives. Air quality is not considered to be a significant issue in this application and has not been raised by environmental health. In terms of the impact on Plesley, it is not considered to significantly impact Plesley and has not been raised as an issue by statutory consultees. In terms of para 183 of the MPP, it is considered the MPPF has to be taken in the round and is a guidance document. The reasoning for the loss of biodiversity has been addressed in the report. Finally, in terms of other developments in the locality, the cumulative impacts would have been assessed at the local plan stage, which provides certainty for the area for new development. And if I can just update you on conditions following discussions with the applicant's agent. They've asked for an adjustment to condition 10, which is set out. This relates to the bus stops, relocation of the bus stops. They've asked for that to be altered from pre-commencement to prior to occupation of any dwelling in order to take account of the separate works that will need to be done to secure the Section 278 agreement under the Highways Act. Condition 13 and 14 have been queried. They relate to the garaging for the flat over the garages. So two garages. Those are the only ones within the site. Those form part of the parking for the development. So we'd ask for those to be retained. And condition 27 is a request for no development above slab level to be changed to prior to occupation. As these relate to bin collection points, so adjacent to the highway, we would ask for them to stay at the details to be submitted at the original wording, so at slab level. Condition 38 has been queried. This relates to an updated requirement for an updated noise report mitigation measures. This is considered necessary to ensure that all mitigation can be addressed at discharge of condition stage. In terms of section 106, we are seeking to include a further obligation in relation to including a mechanism for a viability review. Thank you. Taking you through to the presentation. It's a full application for 183 dwellings and access to Brickkiln Lane on an allocated site for housing for up to 200 dwellings under allocation H1C. Although described as housing generically, the proposal is to provide 100% affordable housing development, combination of affordable rent and shared ownership in a range of 1-bedroom flats and a flat over garage and 2 to 4 bedroom dwellings, including bungalows. Development is an L-shaped plot of approximately 8.1 hectares and has a frontage to both Brickkiln Lane and Abbott Road. It extends around 3 properties, two on Brickkiln Lane, 1 on Abbott Road, and within the site also includes Fish Ponds Hill House. Site is located close to the boundary with Ashfield District Council. The southern boundary adjoins a housing allocation H1B on Skedby Lane, which is currently under development. To the east of the site is Petersfield Close and Romsey Place, separated from the site by the driveway and property to Fish Ponds Hill House. This house and drive and the pond are located within the site area. The site's on the crest of the hill with levels changes of approximately 15 metres across it, although it's level with Abbott Road and rises towards the middle of the site from the Brickkiln Lane side. The site is currently in agricultural field use with hedgerows, and in the southern part of the site is a extensively tree planted area adjacent to the pond. There's an existing pond, which is a long-standing one. Right of way crosses the site from Brickhiln Lane to Skegby Lane, and an overhead electricity line crosses Abbott Road through the site into open countryside. The proposal includes open space, Suds Pond adjacent to Abbott Road, and a second Suds Pond close to the existing pond by Fish Ponds Hill House. So that's on the eastern side of the site. The right of way is retained within the site, and pedestrian cycle links are incorporated into the development. As part of the site access, improvements are required to the Brickhiln Lane junction and a footway cycleway along the site frontage, extending through the site close to the junction with Abbott Road due to a narrowing of the verge width. Junction improvements are also proposed to the Abbott Road junction and a pedestrian crossing installed. The bus stops on either side of Brickhiln Lane, which are located at round about the middle of the proposed junction into the site and directly opposite, are required to be relocated. This offers the opportunity to upgrade them to modern standards, including the real-time notifications and providing hard standings. At the moment, the bus stop on the frontage to the site is a bare grass, is a verge area. Site's laid out with a single spine road with footways either side and extends through the length of the development area with side roads and shared private drives off. It extends around the existing properties on Abbott Road and Brickhiln Lane and follows the edge of the existing driveway to Fish Ponds Hill House, which retains its driveway, although both the driveway and the house are within the site area. The eastern side of the site, which adjoins Petersfield Close and Romsey Drive, is retained as an open area of open space and extends around the house, opens up to an area of open space and a second sub-pond, and will provide a dedicated area of biodiversity in the form of acid grassland. On the northern boundary, the built development is separated from Abbott Road by a Suds Pond, which adjoins Field Farm. The proposal is for a full affordable housing scheme, and although the mix doesn't accord fully with policy H3 and the affordable housing SPD, it's been assessed by the housing manager, and due to its intentions to provide a full affordable development, he's supportive of the mix. This takes account of the largest number of houses being affordable rent, 127 units, and 56 shared ownership. Of these, 11 are bungalows. 78 are 2-bed dwellings, 68 are 3-bed dwellings, with a very limited number of 4 beds, that's 12 dwellings, and 25 1-bed units. This will provide a significant amount of affordable dwellings to Mansfield. If this were to be an open market scheme, the site would be required to provide 10% affordable housing under policy H4. It's a total of 18 affordable housing dwellings. The layout itself is a single estate road with footways either side, secondary streets off, and cul-de-sacs as shared drives. The proposal is designed with a number of dwellings, with the majority of dwellings fronting onto the highways. A number of dwellings then are facing out onto Brickhiln Lane, which infills the area between the existing dwellings fronting the lane and follows round the corner with the junction with Abbott Road to infill the gap with Fields Farm. The dwellings, including the flats, are 2-storey, front the highways in most cases. Parking is on plot in the majority of plots, either to the side or frontage parking, and all dwellings are provided with private amenity space other than the single flat over the garages, the FOG. Setbacks from the frontages allow views between the dwellings, and blocks of dwellings, and the house designs are traditional red brick and render under tiled pitch roofs. And although there is limited scope for street tree planting and street landscaping, it's considered that the urban design approach is acceptable in this case. The urban designer advised in the very early stages of this application. EV charging points and solar panels are integrated into the development. Development does require a substation and pumping station. A SUD scheme is proposed, which will require attenuation discharge to existing combined sewers, although the last piece of information we had on this was it may be possible for them for that to be more limited because of there are difficulties with soil percolation. That will be dealt with at detailed design stage with the flood authority. Site is visible when viewed from Brickkiln Lane. A landscape assessment has recommended retaining hedges and trees, and where possible, retaining them within the development. This has been incorporated into the development where possible, and on the eastern area side, existing trees are retained, which will help screen the development from the adjacent areas, Petersfield Close and Romsey Place. Further hedging and trees can be incorporated into the development via conditions. An area of open space is provided, which will also provide a small amount of biodiversity benefit. The site doesn't have the benefit, though, of having a leap incorporated into the development area. The right-of-way is incorporated through its own pathway through the site, which follows along the line of the spine road. This is secured by condition. In terms of allocations, the site allocation requires contributions to off-site highway junction improvement works, and the site will also provide direct improvements through conditions to the Brickkiln Lane junction and the Abbott Road junction, so where the intersection between the two. It will provide a new footway which follows along that side of the Brickkiln Lane, and improved bus stop provisions. Financial contribution required under the allocation is for a contribution for pooled contributions with other developments for funding the wider off-site junction works. Site allocation identifies potential archaeology and impact on the setting of Ashland Farm, a non-designated heritage asset. Both of these have been looked at by the Council's Conservation Officer and also Lincolnshire County Archaeology. They've advised that condition can address the archaeology within the site should any be found. It's considered there's probably low level risk of that. The Conservation Officer has advised that the impact is less than substantial harm on the setting of Ashland Farm, which is a non-designated heritage asset. However, the loss of the small hedge fields will alter the traditional appearance of the site. But obviously, as an allocation, that was taken into account at the time the allocation was made. The proposal does incorporate existing trees and hedges and further trees where possible within the site. Consideration has been given to neighbouring amenities, and it's assessed that the layout is such that these matters have been addressed by design and layout adjustments. The site will result in a significant loss of biodiversity to the site, 17.71 biodiversity units of grassland and a small gain of 0.8 units of hedgerow, with retention of acid grassland. This is of concern to local residents, and the council's ecologist had raised this in her consultation response. However, she is very supportive of the retention of the acid grassland. The site was submitted before mandatory biodiversity came into force. Whilst policy NE2 seeks to deliver gains, together with SPD requirements, in its case, it's concluded that to deliver an improvement would result in the loss of dwelling numbers. And having regard to the affordable nature of the scheme, the balance overall is considered in favour of this number of units over the loss of biodiversity. This takes account of the allocation of the site having been for up to 200 dwellings. The application as it's before us is for 183. The land does, however, offer breeding and nesting opportunities for skylarks, and this is referred to in the obligation list. Other improvements which are being sought will include bat-friendly lighting, suitable and appropriate tree planting for the locality and protection for the acid grassland area. In terms of viability, full list of financial contributions is set out in the committee report. Consideration is also required to be given to the requirements of the allocation, namely off-site highway improvements and open space and a contribution to open space playing fields. The total package amounts to £1,812 562.49. That's excluding the affordable housing contribution. And you'll see from the understand from the update reports, the viability has been considered in detail. When assessed in relation to the affordable housing scheme and factoring in Homes England grant funding, the applicants, following negotiation with officers, offered £650,000 by way of contribution. Whilst this doesn't enable all the obligations to be met, it does facilitate the allocation requirements and leave an excess for what we are proposing education and health. This is in addition to the 100% affordable housing that's provided. The planning balance in this case is a fine one. Overall, at officer assessment level, in terms of weighing up the merits of the application, the affordable housing provision is considered to be significant in terms of the balance between the affordable housing and other contributions. The proposal would enable development to come forward on this allocated site and contribute to both the district's housing supply overall, and also provide a very significant amount of affordable housing. Taking these into account, it's considered on balance the application can be supported.
Thank you for your report. Speakers on this application, so I'd like to invite Pamela Simpson to the podium to speak first. Red light on. You've got 4 minutes when you're ready.
I am talking to you all yet again. How many developments do you consider sustainable in this area? You're responsible for building on every piece of greenfield. This one has no planning history. Therefore, it's a completely new application, never been put forward for development approval. Last month, this committee made a very, very poor decision in approving a warehouse development close to this proposed site. There's the community action group's objections mentioned transport concerns and the impact on the whole area. Not just roads, but doctors, hospitals, King's Mill and Scrubman Mill. Schools, transport, we are constantly discussing the same things over and over again. When is somebody going to listen? Biodiversity cannot be met. New legislation is put in place. Let me remind you of what is required. Public authorities who operate in England must consider what they can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity in England. It means, as a public authority, you must, 1, consider what you can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity. 2, agree policies and specific objectives based on your consideration. 3, act to deliver your policies and achieve your objectives. We've read the officer's report with the newsman and Skylark 75 new homes, with those from nearby developments who will also be displaced. Transport matters. More vehicles to use Abbott Road, which is already over capacity. It was discussed at the December 23 meeting, and we moaned about the amount of traffic and the issues on Abbott Road with vehicles, but in February 2024, this didn't count as the warehouse was passed. Will it be the same again? Currently, this site has no bus route. One is proposed using full funding. See page 8 of the report. However, you can't mandate the delivery of the bus service. It's up to local bus companies to decide if they will do it. And if so, it will only be until the funds run out, and they've already been cut down already. Read what is said about school places, funding provided. The schools have limited to no capacity to take additional students. Need a new school in the area. Funds again have been reduced. Recent archaeology on the other side of Becker Lane indicates there may be prehistory archaeology within the site of at least regional significance and appears to be a designated medieval landscape focused on the pond and former building adjacent to it. There are also crop marks north of it. Desk-based assessment requires a geophysical survey and evaluation from trial trenching and should be done prior to determination of the application. Note the words prior to, not after, but prior. Waste management, note on page 9, the officer's report. Waste management recycling centres are near full capacity. Further facilities required. There's no contribution, that it's all been put out and reduced out. Wall Road A617, there have been times when it's been closed. Traffic including HGVs locked out from the warehouses will on these occasions have to use Abbott Road. And one closures bring more traffic onto Abbott Road. Traffic from other developments that you pass, hotel, care home, fast food restaurants, petrol station, business units, gyms, nursery, over 2,000 new houses will all use Abbott Road and Water Lane. All these developments in the area causing floods, road congestion, pollution, which is now known to be accountable for all cancers and light pollution. Be responsible, vote against this development. Mansfield already needs its name change into Mansfield in the water. Don't put more into it.
There was a chance for members to ask you questions, Pamela. May not be any, but I'll ask. Thank you. Do members have any questions of the speaker? No one's indicated. Thank you, Pamela. Yeah, Cody. Same thing again, Andrew, when you're ready, if you get your red button on, got 4 minutes.
Evening, Chair, members and officers. I want to start by saying I'm not here to object to the principle of this development. In fact, the council should be applauded for structuring a scheme that delivers affordable housing on this scale. It should be noted, however, there is no condition that secures 100% affordable housing. Just it's going to be included in 106. I don't think it should be a condition. What we consider unacceptable is the development comes at the expense of a 30% loss in biodiversity. Scheme contravenes both the national planning policy framework and the council's own local plan too, both of which require schemes to deliver biodiversity gain. The officer's report draws similarities with the industrial development approved last month. Even that delivers a gain. The applicant thoughtfully points out that written response to that biodiversity gain is not legally mandatory. It is, however, a clear requirement of the NPPF. They can't simply or arbitrarily disregard policies that don't suit their case. As the council's own ecology manager points out, the failure of the scheme to deliver net gain for biodiversity is a matter for members to consider in each of their decisions. Whilst the benefits of an affordable housing scheme might outweigh marginal biodiversity loss, 30% is not marginal. This scheme was allowed to go through on that basis, we risk setting a very dangerous precedent for all future developments, especially when considering the quantum of developments planned in close proximity to this one. I also have concerns about traffic. Brickhill Lane is traffic calmed. Junction with Abbott Road is over capacity and identified as over capacity. I would like to see some integration with Ashfield. I understand why there is no collaboration to look at a joint access point. Finally, I don't consider that the Section 106 payments reduced from 1.6 million to 650,000 represent good value for money for the taxpayer. The independent report commissioned by the authority gives it says that the development will generate equivalent to £3 million profit and a 1.6 billion Section 106 payment. That's a 9% return. The developer's effectively saying it's break even. It's so far different. I don't understand why we aren't appointing an independent valuer to confirm the difference in the two figures. They're not even close to each other. £3 million apart. Main difference is the external works. An independent valuer would cost, I believe, up to £2,000 and possibly give another £1 million in Section 106 payments. In conclusion, my proposal would be the application is deferred on the following grounds. Further mitigation is sought to materially improve the biodiversity loss. An independent review of the external works to confirm whether they are reasonable or not, and ultimately generate a material increase in the Section 106 payment. Inclusion of a condition that secures the control for dwellings on site as 100% affordable housing in perpetuity. Collaboration with Ashfield and Highways on optimising and improving access arrangements.
You finished. Do members have any questions of the speaker? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Miles, you talk about 30% loss of diversity. Do you consider that to be as serious as what you're really saying it is? Do you think it could be moved somewhere else? Could it be encapsulated into another development?
I think it partly could be that, but I think it could be mitigated on this development. It may mean the loss of some of the housing. We may have to go with fewer than 193 homes. There's some mitigation on the site that could reduce that loss. So it could be mitigated both off-site and on-site. My preference would be that it's mitigated on-site. There's some adjustment to the schemes with additional planting, more green spaces, and some of the biodiversity. Nearly a third of the loss of biodiversity. So if that was replicated on every development in the area, something like 8 developments coming up in the area, if every one of those 8 developments had a 30% loss in biodiversity, kill the ecology of the area.
Any further question? Councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you envisage, you mentioned about the traffic, do you envisage major traffic problems with this, and particularly coming out onto Brickkill Lane and then onto the junction with Abbott Road? Do you envisage any serious problems with that?
Yes, that junction is already identified as being over capacity. I think the bigger concern would be anybody exiting this bay. Other concern would be not just going to Abbott Road, in fact, into Ashfield. If people wanted to get into Mansfield, they'd probably have to go down the traffic car. The other junction that's identified as over capacity, junction Brickkill Lane and Ladywood Lane, with very little mitigation. That junction down there, and it's traffic calmed all the way down there. So I guess I think it will overcrowd Brickkill Lane. It will make the junction on Abbott Road more dangerous than it is today. It's in a dip. It's when you come over the top, you come from 2 lanes down to 1 lane, drop down the hill. Got queuing traffic on the right hand side, where it's Brickkill Lane. It will in that situation. Mitigation, I believe the mitigation is on that junction is all to do with pedestrian crossings and just do the pedestrian crossings, not the actual structure of the junction.
Any other questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
So, Mr. Mills, thank you for that. In effect, I think what you're saying in summary is you're not particularly objecting to the fact to the housing development, probably because it's affordable housing. If we could guarantee it's affordable housing. And secondly, secondly, the lack of the loss of biodiversity, 30%, sounds a fair bit to me. But I think the main issue is the lowering of the 106 monies. Can you just explain that a bit more?
Yes, the council commissioned CP viability to undertake an independent viability report. They came back with a profit of just under £3 million, gave a 9% return, paying a 106 payment of 1.6 million. There were some elements of that that the developer disputed. That 2.9 through some negotiation. If you accepted all the areas of dispute that the developer did on the CP report, it took the gross profit down to about 2 million with a 1.6 million 6 payment. What the developer is saying is they will only make 2 million without any 6 payment. The two are so far apart, they're not even close. I think the biggest difference is are the external costs. An independent quantity survey, which I believe would cost about £2,000, validate the difference of the external costs and just do those right. In theory, the council could invest £2,000 in a QS, the quantity surveyor, and get a return of £1 million from that £2,000 investment if the QS agreed with the.
Any further questions? Nope. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miles. I'll invite our final speaker, Simon Betts, who's the agent. Thank you. Ready, Simon? If you get your light on, got 4 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do so on behalf of the applicant. Let me just begin by saying that as an allocated housing site, the residential development of this site has already been tested through a statutory consultation process and therefore represents a committed housing site for the authority with the principle of development already firmly established. The officer report provides a detailed appraisal of development viability. As noted, the key issue here is that the development cannot sustain the full extent of planning obligations being sought, irrespective of whether it's 100% affordable housing scheme or an open market housing scheme. Accordingly, this committed housing site would be rendered undeliverable without the prioritisation of financial planning obligations. Should the authority be unable to deliver its committed housing sites, it then becomes more vulnerable to speculative applications that may not meet with its requirements. The applicant has sought a negotiated position and a sum of 650,000 has been made on a without prejudice basis, responding to a sum latterly proposed by officers and in the interest of drawing the matter to a conclusion. The applicant has provided full flexibility of how this sum is allocated, taking account of local priorities as judged by officers and members of this planning committee. In the applicant's view, the 650,000 remains a substantial sum of money that can be provided to assist in key areas of mitigation while still rendering the development viable. As noted in the officer report, the applicant is working with a registered provider to bring about the delivery of 183 affordable homes on this site. As also noted, the traditional model of minimum delivery with open market housing is evolving, and this represents a substantial and positive opportunity for the authority to enable a more forward-thinking means to which affordable housing can actually be delivered. The applicant notes that officers referred to existing supply both on permitted site and financial contributions. The applicants previously provided detailed submissions as to why, in their view, this is optimistic. The approval of this application will deliver a large and significant boost to affordable housing delivery over a short-term period. There is absolutely no policy imperative to hold back on delivery whereby there is a means to solve a problem like a lack of supply. In respect to biodiversity net gain, as clarified in the officer report, the application predates the requirement of mandatory 10% provision and was also submitted sometime in advance of the more recently adopted SPD. It should also be noted there is no explicit numerical or other requirement secure B&G within the allocation policy itself, H1C, or any two of the local plan. Moreover, the delivery of this allocated housing site would inevitably result in a clear change in the utilisation of existing land. But the more important asset grassland will be retained and protected, and it should not be forgotten. The scheme delivers a B&G in hedgerow units. The applicant has worked with officers for nearly 2 years on this scheme and has sought to provide a sensitive and high quality scheme that delivers against the terms of the housing allocation. The applicant would urge the authority to take this unique opportunity to deliver a significant boost in affordable housing supply and delivery over the short term, which includes a substantial sum in terms of planning obligations. The scheme is judged to meet with all key national and local planning policy considerations, and it is noted there are no objections from technical, statutory and non-statutory consultees. As such, members are urged to support the officer recommendation and grant planning permission for the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions of the speaker? Councillor Answer.
Chairman, what measures, if any, have you made in which to seriously address the biodiversity requirements?
Everything that's within the applicant's power to do something on site, they have done. But I think we've heard some debate already about a precedent being set. In terms of legislation, there's a clear transition period. Because this application has been in for some time, I think it would be misleading to say that other schemes will follow suit. This is an application that's been in planning for some time. It's an allocation. It's been tested through an examination process of the local plan, and there's an inevitability of clear loss of land in terms of B&G under the proposal. So I don't think we can come to a position and say we abandon a previous allocation that's set out in the local plan. This is a committed housing site. So I think everything that's can be done has been done. In terms of we've heard about the priority as the grassland that can be fenced off and protected. So the applicant is happy to commit to that. But then if we start thinking about offsites proposals as well, we come back into the same viability consideration, because that comes at a cost if it's being delivered elsewhere on site, and therefore you reach a position whereby what's the most important thing. We believe that the greater balance and greater weight should be applied to the 100% affordable housing scheme. And I don't think for any applications coming forward now, after the biting point of the legislation, the authority will be in a clear position, because the regulations require 10% provision. And the SBD, which was produced to align to that emerging legislation, which was delayed, working parallel, because you have a regulatory requirement and then a policy requirement as well. So I don't think we can say this is it would follow a particular precedent beyond this application. It's just the point at which this application had been put in, and it's been tested through that other process, as I say. So it was in supporting an allocation for housing up to 200 dwellings, and clearly this scheme is well below that. Have to accept that there will be that loss of land. That judgment happens at the allocation stage, to respectfully suggest.
Have a further question, Councillor Answer?
Yes, I see you seek to lower the 106 contributions. Can you please explain why you want to reduce it by over 1.8 million? And when you was doing looking at the social housing aspect of it, did due diligence come into this? Because I can't think of a developer who wants to develop something and make a loss.
Yes, so in terms of that figure presented in committee reports, I would clarify the applicant's position on that. We haven't been provided with the advice provided to officers in terms of that summary position. All I can say is that on behalf of the applicant, an agreement has been reached through negotiation, which has been discussed, is a perfectly legitimate and appropriate needs to go about this. And it was actually a sum of money that was put forward, and the applicant agreed to that sum of money as a contribution because it would maintain a viable development whilst also delivering the affordable houses on the site.
The question, councillor Answer.
Thank you, Chairman. In your transport assessment, you have neglected to take into consideration traffic heading towards junction 29 via Chesterfield Road. Can you please tell me why, including a credible methodology for not considering the potential traffic movement?
So in terms of that specific point, I'm not a highways engineer, but what I would say is that the transport consultant has worked with the Highway Authority and responded to all requests for further work during the consideration of this application, including undertaking further modelling work. The Highway Authority have accepted the position in terms of this scheme taking account of its own impacts and concluding that there is capacity within the existing network. We've already talked about improvements that are being made as well. And also, in terms of strategic transport improvements, the officers, as in their report, they propose that 650,000, the full amount that the County Council as Highway Authority are asking for in terms of strategic improvements, will be allocated towards wider improvements. So what I can't do is talk you through the specific methodology. I can only tell you that the technical consultee that is advising on this matter is happy, has no objection, and we've undertaken all work that's been asked of us by the Highway Authority and the Planning Authority.
Anyone else got a question? No? Thank you, Mr. Betts. Turn your light off, councillor Answer. Thank you. Do members have any questions of the officer? Councillor Answer.
Chairman, in your report, we see that there are various Mansfield District Council policies that have either been skirted around or ignored. Can you tell me why that is? And I refer to an example of the local policy plan H4, where it raises conflicts with proposed housing mix guidance and the Mansfield District Council policy regarding biodiversity. I want to put it to you that these policies exist for a reason. However, you have ignored these to an extent. Why is that?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the housing mix, H4, this is a policy which is relating to housing development, affordable housing. This gives a spread, so it's across the board suggestion. Down. Better. Better. Thank you. Thank you. This is the affordable housing policy. The housing policy first of all sets out the proportions of affordable housing in respect of the two zones. So obviously we've got zone 1, which is the lower value areas of the district, and zone 2. Site falls within zone 1. So under the housing policy, the affordable housing policy, on a normal site that was being developed by a developer by a housing developer, you would expect we would be seeking 10%. This is a greenfield site, so we'd be looking for 10% affordable housing to be provided on site. And then as you work through the policy then breaks down into comments in relation to council will consider the type of property and tenure in relation to identified needs. And then it goes on in relation to offsite contributions. There is a non-compliance, obviously, by automatically in relation to H4 because we have 100% affordable housing. So in terms of policy H4, that setting basically the standard for the amount of housing we would expect to see on a volume site. In this site, we have the unusual situation of it's a full 100%. So by default, it's not possible to comply with H4 because that under the policy, that would mean 18 houses to be delivered as affordable housing. This is proposing 183. So the balance in terms of the assessment was, and this was having regard to the housing managers in consultation response, that that's an acceptable position to have 183 as opposed to 18 if this were open market. I apologies if it wasn't clarified enough within the report. And then I think turning to policy NE2. Policy NE2 is a difficult one in that this predated the mandatory regulations in relation to 10% BNG required to be delivered on larger sites. Local plan obviously predated that. The policy says seek to deliver, and that on the sites which predate the regulations coming into force, the legislation is very, very clear that you don't apply the 10% requirement. What you rely on is your local plan policies. And obviously that's what we've done in this case. In terms of then the assessment of the policies, and obviously you'll appreciate that local plan contains policies relating to all manner of scenarios. It is for the council to determine which of those policies are considered relevant to each particular application. That's very much enshrined in case law. And there is no requirement to accord with every single policy in a local plan. And the case law and the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court judgments are very, very clear on that and have been for quite a significant length of time. So in this case, the policies that we considered were relevant to this application were set out in the policy list in the report. And the balance then, in terms of the planning balance, is the weight to be given to each policy overall in terms of the final conclusion to be made. And in this case, the officer's conclusion was that the balance tilted in favour of the affordable housing on this site.
And can I just pop in here, just in terms of you were talking about the actual mix of the affordable housing. It doesn't comply with the council SPD, and I think that's quite clearly set out in your reports. But it's basically, again, it's a balancing act. So you've got, if we had, for example, 18 dwellings, we would definitely want it to comply because we're only getting 18 dwellings, whereas this site we're getting 183 dwellings. Therefore, from an officer's point of view, we feel that the guidance can actually be relaxed because we're getting 100% affordable housing as opposed to 10% affordable housing. So you're quite right; it doesn't comply with the SPD in terms of mix of affordable housing, but you've got to put into the balance that you're getting 183 properties compared to 18.
Yeah. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. I think in terms of what you're saying about the affordable housing, it's quite clear it's doing the heavy lifting in terms of this application.
From what you're saying, you'd need 10 equivalent developments to acquire the same amount of affordable housing if you are going from 10%. So there was a few things mentioned in regards to whether or not the conditions in the S106 would guarantee that there would be 100% affordable housing. Can you just clarify that it would be the case within the conditions we've got either in the 106 or in the application itself that 100% affordable housing would 100% be delivered, please?
Yes, that requirement is to include that, or rather that we have set this out in terms of embedding it within the section 106. I appreciate the option might be a condition, but in fact there's been case law in the last year or so regarding in fact it was Newark Council on a much smaller scheme where they imposed a condition for a dwelling, I think, in the countryside, and required it to be a holiday home. That was very firmly booted out, and it's clarified nationally the position really as to how far you can constrain a developer who's applied for one thing and then impose another lesser require, or rather a greater obligation on them. In this case, it would be standard practice because the application was made for dwellings. It wasn't an application for affordable housing, it was for dwellings. The offer came some way through the application. It started off as an open market scheme, and then about a year ago moved to 100% affordable housing. That I understand is because there was grant aid. Homes England will be grant aiding this, which is why it's moved to 100%, because that secures the grant. My understanding from the developer. So you have a construction company who Piper Homes, who will then find the land. They will build the houses under an agreement then that the land will be delivered solely for affordable housing. So we're pretty secure in that. We then secure it further through the section 106, and section 106 requires it to be fully affordable housing, 100% affordable housing across the site. And then to secure it even further, we require it to have we require the council to have sole nomination right. So not only do we ring fence it to affordable housing, but we then ensure that it's delivered and it applies housing for the needs of residents here in the district. So it can't go outside, it can't go to Newark and Sherwood. It is solely for residents who are in need in the district.
Any other questions, Councillor Answer?
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got one more for this one. Also, what consideration have you given to the National Planning Policy Framework, and particularly paragraph 186A, which states in respect of habitat and biodiversity?
Okay, so the NPPF and the paragraph that you referred to, it's quite clear in that paragraph, I think, to be fair, that it says, I think the words are should be refused if you're not into biodiversity. There's been a lot of case law in that regard because that's quite strong wording for a national guidance document. When you look at planning policies, as Karen said earlier, in terms of local plan policies or national planning policy framework, you have to look at it in the round, and there will always, I would say 9 times out of 10, be a policy somewhere that doesn't quite comply with the development proposal in front of you. I don't think it'd be fair to say that it definitely doesn't comply with that paragraph. There's no getting away from it. There is a loss of biodiversity. And I think it would be hard pushed as well to say that it probably complies with policy NE2 either. But that is the balancing act that has to be undertaken. It does comply with other policies. And it depends how much you weigh it depends how much weight you give to each policy in terms of which way you go on in assessing an application. And it's officer opinion that, yes, we accept that it doesn't comply with biodiversity policy. However, the benefit of having affordable housing, the benefit of bringing an allocation forward outweighs the biodiversity.
Final question.
The final question really is listening to this one of the speakers who stated that there could be an independent report. We've had the report done and we've had our report, and he was saying that we could probably save £1 million by having an independent report done regarding the 106. I'm not against the development per se. I'm more concerned about them developing at our expense. As far as I'm concerned, they're cutting out £1.8 million of money that should be going to within the community, and that's just simply going away. So we're actually giving money for them to continue to build this property. So what's the chance of getting somebody independent to verify that?
So in terms of the viability, I'll try and take you through it as to my understanding in terms of what's happened with the application. So a viability assessment was submitted by the applicant, which is normal practice. And then we as officers appoint an independent viability assessor to check that viability assessment. And it's fair to say the advice that came back to start with was that the development was viable. However, viability is not an exact science, and it does become a process of negotiation. So in terms of the issues in terms of this application, I understand that it was the build costs and the plot costs that were the issue and were the dispute between the two viability assessors. And the independent viability assessor accepted that he use the BCIS data. It's very complicated, but from the applicant side, which actually once you change one variable in a viability assessment, it changes the whole outcome. So the way it finished off with the viability assessment with the independent assessor, he basically said that, like you say, that I think when you're talking about a further study, I think you're talking about quantity surveyor. Is that right in terms of the actual bill cost? So in terms of the quantity surveyor, our independent assessor recommended that we might want to think about having a quantity surveyor look at the bill costs. However, again, sometimes this is recommended, sometimes it isn't, because whilst they can go up, they can also go down. So it is a risk, I suppose. So what we did is we asked for the assessor to run a viability appraisal based on market housing as opposed to affordable housing to see whether there was any difference. And they're the figures that are in the report that Karen explained earlier. So the market housing assessment clearly shows that the viability of this site is unviable. So if somebody wants to put market housing on here, it was a high level assessment and it didn't go into as much detail as the application one. But it showed that it was unviable, quite severely unviable as well. So it had to be built. So then we had this decision to make, and it becomes a negotiation between the applicant and the council. The advice from the viability assessor was that the offer of 650,000 was actually a good result for the council in terms of Section 106 obligations. And it really only can be achieved because it's an affordable housing scheme and because it gets the housing grant money. So that's the position we were in. There was the option there to go to the quantity surveyor. The advice back was that it is a risk. Like I say, you could go to the quantity surveyor and you could find the advice that I spoke to him today actually, and he actually said that the costs were actually going up. So it is that he's finding that in a lot of these recent assessments. But like I say, it's a judgment that has to be made. An opposite judgment was that the offer of 650,000 was the best scenario for this site.
Councillor Tempest Mitchell, did you indicate? Yep.
Thanks. That last little bit, actually, before I forget. So I think you've just said that the offer from the applicant, 650,000. Is that how it worked in that order?
It's a process of negotiation. So obviously in terms of negotiation, you usually find that someone starts lower and then gives a bit more and then you come to a figure somewhere in the middle. We have to take advice from our independent viability assessment. He's the expert on this. That was his advice to us, that actually he was, yeah, he thought this was a good offer.
Right. Yep. Is that the email? Is it 28th of September? I think. An update, or is there a more up to date update?
There are other emails, but because they're negotiation, they've been kept sensitive.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. I seek a proposer and seconder for the proposer by Councillor Hammersley, seconded by Councillor Whitby. Which now means we're in debate mode. Any comment? Councillor Whitby.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a unique application, but I welcome the idea of bringing forward 183 new affordable houses in Mansfield. The loss of a chunk of the financial contributions is a concern, but then again, the allocation of funding of £650,000 into a deprived area is welcomed and it will benefit many residents in Ladybrook. The lack of biodiversity, the loss of biodiversity is also a concern. However, we've got thousands of residents on the council house waiting list, which is a huge concern for me and outweighs that. And with that in mind, I'll be supporting this application.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
I think, as Sir Whitby said, that the allocation of 183 affordable housing would be great for the area. However, I keep seeing these signs here, there and everywhere that say it's 30 miles an hour for a reason. That reminds me of the 186 that I think the words are, it should be refused. Then now we should have a 10% rise of BNG and we've actually got in effect, therefore, a 40% loss. Originally, it was 1.8 million 106 monies. And I don't need to go through all of the where the money was allocated, but I could. But I'm just looking at the education part, which is this proposed development of 183 houses. It's quite pertinent, this bit, because at 1 minute we're saying if it's 18 houses, then we probably won't let it go through. But because it's 183 houses, we would let it go through. But what that means is there's so many more kids for schools, there's so many more doctors needed, there's so many more facilities, books in the libraries, etc., etc. We're just going on to the education, 38 primary places, 29 secondary places, 6 post 16 places. And originally 90,000 for SEND allocation, obviously in schools, and pretty much that's all gone because the 798 that would have gone to education, along with all the other bits of 106 money, is gone. And it seems to me for the cost of maybe 2, 3, 4,000 to get an independent quantity surveyor or whoever would do it, the expert, the independent expert, we're expected to vote for something that to me goes back to that it's 30 for a reason. So that we don't just go over 30 or 35 or then maybe 40. Well, it's the same with this. With putting corners all the time, it seems to me, for the sake of 2, 3, 4,000, we could have an independent assessor, defer it for now. If that guy comes back or that person comes back and says, actually, it should be 1 million or 1.2 million or whatever, then so be it. If that person then says that it's not viable, then it's not viable. We're back to 30 miles an hour. I'll be voting against it.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah, you can clarify that.
In terms of the 18 houses and the versus 183, I didn't mean to say that it would be granted. It was just that the weighting would be slightly different. So, you know, it's not that it would have gone straight through. It just would have been that people weighted it was just 80. That's the actual significance. I'm not saying it would be granted, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm just saying, that it would just be a different assessment.
Yep. In the circumstances where we're looking at 183 houses, we've got more houses, therefore more people, therefore more public services needed. And the biggest complaint people have about development is there isn't enough infrastructure. And if this provided all of that infrastructure with its original 1.8 million 106 monies, fine. It's affordable housing, fantastic. But it doesn't. We've actually cut it way down. We're cutting corners at both ends. We're building more houses, therefore more people, but we're actually cutting the money, therefore less school places or whatever, doctors, surgeries, etc. And I just keep going back to the fact that we could just get an independent surveyor and whoever, totally independent, do a report. And I think instead of me voting against it, I think we should defer it, get that report and decide thereafter.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Tempest Mitchell. Well, the officers did explain why they chose not to get an independent quantity surveyor because of the risk. Councillor Answer, I think you've got another indication.
Yes, Chairman. Mine is a similar view because that's what I'd asked the questions about in particular. We do want the houses. There's no question about that. But we don't want the houses at the expense of all other stuff. In other words, you know, should cut down on everything: education, bus services, transport. Well, not transport, but quite a number of items that we can see quite clearly that we are sacrificing to build the houses to satisfy a developer. The developer wants to develop it, then let him develop it. But he shouldn't be turning around to us building 180 houses, wanting just to reduce our 106 contribution because they say they can't afford it. I would support the fact that we should have somebody, for the sake of it, 2 or 3 grand, look at this. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Somebody else will come along. We're not desperately desperate for a particular developer. There are other developers out there, and there are lots of sites around where we are now, around this area, that are going to be developed in the very near future. So things will happen, but I just feel that we're having the wool pulled over our eyes a little bit, Chairman. And I'd support going back for a further valuation.
Any further comments? No. All right. We've got a proposer and seconder for the motion, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of granting planning permission, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Confirm that the application was voted for approval 5-2. So planning application reference 2022-0612 full 183 number dwellings with access and associated works and land west of Brickkiln Lane and south of Abbott Road is being granted planning permission. Thank you. Just invite Councillor Clay back in. Yeah, all settled. I'll just wait for any members of the public who wish to leave. All right, item 5 on the agenda, planning application reference 2024-0052, full demolition of existing garage, proposed 1 number 3 bedroom, two-story semi-detached dwelling, and 1 number 2 bedroom semi-detached single-story dwelling with off-street parking and a parking area for 14 Hermitage Lane. It's a resubmission of plan application 2022-0660 full Red Cup 14 Hermitage Lane, Mansfield. Before I invite the officer to make a report, we have had a request for a site visit on this one from the ward councillor, Councillor Stendhal. Reason for the site visit is she doesn't believe it fits in with the current design of properties, and it would be out of context for the area. Do we have a proposer for a site meeting? Is it councillor answer? Is that seconded by anyone? No. Okay. No need to vote on that, then there's not going to be a site visit. I think we're going to Google Maps and the site plans should be acceptable for us to do the recommendation. So I'll now invite the officer to make the report.
Chairman. This application site comprises of a side garden, garage and parking for the existing 2-story dwelling, 14 Hermitage Lane. Surrounding area is residential in character, comprising of a mix of detached and semi-detached. Planning permission was refused by committee last year, a subsequent appeal dismissed for the demolition of the existing attached garage and the erection of 2 3-bedroom semi-detached houses. This application was refused as the proposed 2-story dwellings would adversely affect the outlook from and light received from the side-facing window of number 8 due to the scale, massing and proximity of the boundary with this property. The inspector agreed with these conclusions when dismissing the subsequent appeal. This current application is seeking permission for the demolition of the existing garage and the erection of a 3-bedroom 2-story house with a 2-bedroom single-story bungalow attached. 2 new vehicle accesses will be formed off Hermitage Lane, one for the proposed 2-story house and the other for the proposed dwelling. Number 14. The existing access will be utilised for the proposed bungalow on the northern part of the plot. 2 parking spaces will be provided for each of the proposed new dwellings and 3 spaces for number 14 to the front. There have been no statutory objections to the proposal. Councillor Stendhal has objected to the proposal, and as we heard, requested a site visit. Her objections have been summarised in your committee report, but predominantly they relate to the character of the area, residential amenity and highway safety. There have been 2 public objections, which again are summarised in your report. Turning to the main issues in the application, the site is located within the urban area, so therefore the principle of the development is considered to be acceptable. In terms of residential amenity, this has been fully analysed in your reports, but in summary, this revised scheme seeks to address the objections to the previous application to take appeal by providing a two-storey house in the southern part of the site and a single-storey bungalow adjacent to the boundary with the neighbouring property to the north. Right. As the proposed two-storey dwelling would be set around 7.2 metres from the shared boundary with number 8 and 9.7 metres from its side wall containing the kitchen and dining room window. This element of the scheme would not appear unduly overbearing to or significantly reduce the level of outlook, daylight or sunlight received from the side-facing window number 8. Turning to the impact of the proposed bungalow on number 8, it is acknowledged that the new dwelling would have a larger footprint than the garage of the existing garage outbuilding that it's replacing. However, the application site occupies lower ground than number 8, and the proposed bungalow would not extend close to the boundary than the structure it is replacing, retaining a gap of around 1 metre to gain access to the rear of the new property. It would also be broadly comparable in height to the garage outbuilding to be demolished and have a flat roof adjacent to the side-facing kitchen window, number 8, which is similar in profile to the structure it's replacing. Officers consider that the development have addressed the concerns raised by the committee and the inspector in terms of the application, will provide an appropriate living environment for both existing and future residents. In terms of the character and appearance of the area, the proposal seeks to erect a two-storey house and an attached bungalow in place of an existing garage outbuilding within the grounds of the property. The wider area has a broad mix of housing types and styles, numerous pairs of semi-detached dwellings along both sides of the frontage line. There is also an existing bungalow number 8 immediately to the north of the site. As such, the introduction of a two-storey dwelling and attached bungalow will not be at odds with the prevailing character and pattern of development in the vicinity of the site. On this basis, officers are satisfied that the development will not adversely affect the character and appearance of the area. In terms of highways, there has been no objection from the Highway Authority. In terms of the proposed parking arrangements, each property will benefit from frontage parking where vehicles would either need to reverse out of the space into the highway when exiting or manoeuvre into the highway first before reversing into the spaces. As this is a common occurrence on Heritage Lane, where many properties do not have their own on-site turning space, meaning that they are forced to manoeuvre in the highway to either enter or exit their parking spaces. Drivers will be aware of such movements and adjust their behaviour to take account of this. It is considered that the proposal is acceptable in highway terms. All other material considerations in this application are considered to be acceptable. Therefore, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission with subject conditions outlined in the report.
We don't have any public speakers on this one, so do members have any questions of the officer on that report? No? I have a proposer and a seconder, proposed by Councillor Hammersley, seconded Councillor Whitby. Now in debate mode, any comments on this application? In debate mode? No? No? Okay, go straight to the vote then, please. All those in favour of granting planning permission, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? The result of that was 7 in favour, 1 abstention. So result is that planning application reference 2024-0052 full demolition of existing garage, proposed 1 number 3 bedroom 2-storey semi-detached dwelling, 1 number 2 bedroom semi-detached single-storey dwelling with off-street parking and parking area 14 Hermitage Lane. It's a resubmission of plan application 2022-0660 full Redkirk 14 Hermitage Lane, Mansfield has been granted planning permission. Thank you. Move on to agenda item 6, appendices for human rights use classes. Show of hands for read and noted them. Item 7, the planning appeal decisions 29th of January 2024, 26th February 2024. Likewise, can I have a show of hands? Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you, committee. That concludes business for tonight. Safe journey home. Thank you.